Kate, it's great that you brought in that log of some of the thoughts that you had. Can you explain what happened?
Yeah, yeah. They asked me at work to go. We needed some file folders, and so they needed somebody to go pick them up. And I just felt, I felt really panicky. So I wrote it down.
Did you actually go to get the folders?
Yeah.
You did?
Yeah.
So is this log of the thoughts that you were having before you went or during, or what is it?
Well, sort of before and during.
Okay, good. Well, why don't you explain it to me so I can understand what happened?
Like before, I was thinking, well, I can't do it. Okay, and then I was thinking, well, could I get somebody else to do it? You know,
Right.
could I make somebody else do it?
Yeah, they're very similar to thoughts that you had for some other things that triggered the anxiety. I think we talked about that in another session, right?
Yeah.
So the I can't do it's a familiar theme then, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah, very much so. And so then when I got in the car and I was driving there, I started feeling like I was going to pass out, and I started feeling really anxious. And I kept thinking, you know, like somebody's going to slam into my car. You know, like I'm going to be going through an intersection and somebody's just going to broadside me.
Right.
And
so what was the anxiety rating that was associated there?
oh, it was
I
like
see it,
100%.
So
Yeah.
way up to the top of the scale.
Yeah, yeah.
Right. So let's take a look at some of those thoughts if it's okay today.
Okay.
Can we do that?
Okay.
We really haven't gone into detail on the thoughts before and tried to take a look at them to check them out, and that's what I'd like to do now.
Okay.
So let's see, which one of those would you like to start working with? You have, I'll pass out,
Yeah.
someone will slam into me.
Yeah, I think these two.
The one, someone will slam into me and the I'll pass out? Yeah, the I'll pass out one seems to have been particularly difficult for you, from what I gather.
Well, I don't want to drive if I'm afraid I'm going to pass out.
Is that a recurrent thought that you have?
Pretty much.
Right. Now let's just take a look at that and check out to see, you know, whether it would come true or not, or how accurate it is. So let's see. You've driven probably lots of times in your life already, haven't you? Even though you've been anxious sometimes.
Yeah.
So how old are you now? You're early 50s.
Yeah.
52, I think it was. And you started driving at about what age?
Like 16, 17.
Okay. And so you've been driving for, what, 36 years?
Yeah.
Right. Right. And as you were having this thought, what was it, earlier this week? What day was it?
Yeah, it was Wednesday.
Wednesday. What do you think the likelihood, at that time you were having that thought, the likelihood was in your mind that you actually would pass out?
Oh, I'd say the likelihood, I'd say about 90%.
Oh, 90% sure that you were going to have, you were going to pass out?
Well, that I could, yeah.
That you could pass out. And then going back to this numbers of years you've been driving, 36 years, and you know there are a lot of days in the year, and we think of roughly how many times would you have driven daily over those years? Well, just to give us an average.
Probably one or two every day.
At least one or two.
Yeah.
I suspect maybe there would have been days you'd driven more. So we added all that up, and I wonder about how many times that you've actually driven a car since you've been 16.
Well, it's got to be in the thousands.
Yeah, but at least 10,000. Maybe if we did twice a day, it'd be up 20,000 and more. And
wow.
Have you ever passed out in those 20,000 or so days of driving, or times of driving?
No.
So you've never passed out?
No, but I feel like I'm gonna.
Yeah, you feel like it, but it hasn't happened. And so we have this 90% estimate that it's going to happen, and yet we have the 0% actually happening. So what do you think? Is there another estimate that you could make that would be more on target?
Well, I mean, you're right. You're right. I've driven for a long time. I've often felt like I was going to pass out.
Yes.
But I haven't done it.
Right.
So
what's the true risk for you?
Let's say maybe like 5%.
5%. Yeah. So we went from 90 to 5 by thinking it through, which is great.
It's sort of embarrassing.
But still, we're at 5. And
Yeah.
and we have the actual experience of 0. So I think what we're seeing here is something that happens with lots of people that have anxiety, just like you. And that is that for one reason or another, whether it's the way their brains are wired or their experiences they've had in life, that they get to the point where they overestimate the risk of something bad happening. So when they think of driving or going up on an elevator or whatever it is that they're fearful of, they have an estimate that's way over what anyone who doesn't have that anxiety problem would give to that. So you're still giving it 5%. So we have a way to go.
Yeah.
Now, the point here is not to say there's no risk ever of things happening that are bad, but that if we can be realistic about it, it helps us manage the anxiety.
Okay.
So why don't we do the same thing with that thought about someone slamming into your car? So what do you think the probability of that was in your mind at the time the thought popped into your mind?
I'd say
Right when it
the
occurred.
probability was about an 80.
80, so that one was
Yeah.
pretty high too.
Yeah.
And again, we look at all these days of driving and 10 or 20,000 or more times you've driven. How many times has someone hit you?
None.
None. Well, that's fortunate. Some people do get into accidents. I mean, in my life, I've had a couple that people have run into me. Fortunately, none of them have harmed me or anybody else. They've been what they call fender benders, and we've gone on our way. And again, as I pointed out, we don't want to try to eliminate the idea that there's risk or sweep it under the carpet or anything. We need to be honest about it. But it looks like for both you and for me, the risk is way lower than, what did you say, 80% or something like that?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. So as you look at these two estimates of risk, could you mark a different level on that for now?
Yeah.
What do you think?
Yeah, I'll put the 5% down.
You're going to put the 5% for passing out.
Yeah.
So you're still stuck on that level.
Well, it might be lower,
Right.
but
That still seems the way it
5%
is. All
still
right, well, that's what we
seems
have to
low.
deal with, the way you see things. And how about for someone running into you?
I'd say maybe 2% for that.
So that's gone down a fair amount.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, I have a hunch that having experienced panic attacks influences the way you see things like fear of passing out. Is that right?
Yeah.
When you're having a panic attack, you get that feeling like you're
I'm
dizzy
pretty
and
convinced that it's
right.
going to happen.
So that's something that we're going to be working on to try to help you with managing these panic attacks. And I don't think we'll have the time this session, but in a session before too long, we're going to work on some ways to manage your breathing and some other things that can help you calm down your emotions and calm down this feeling that you might pass out. So I think that'll give you an extra advantage, and hopefully it'll move it down even below the 5%.
Okay.
So that'll be a project for the future. Okay? So
Okay.
for homework, perhaps you could continue to do some of this logging, and you could even add a column here for checking it out.
Okay.
We could call that the realistic thoughts column.
Okay.
Good.
Okay. I'll do that.
So we have a good project ahead of us.
Okay.
Right.